Sundarara, we are live.
Namaskara. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Acharya Pavanosmakam. Acharyani cha Bharati. Devo Narayana Shri Shaha Devi Mangala Devata. We started off on a very interesting journey on the day of Madhva Navami, where we got an overview about the Madhwa philosophy, Sri Madhvacharya himself, and we talked a little bit about how that form of philosophy, that school of philosophy, has sort of flown like the Ganges water, forever purifying the world and always enriching us. And one of the biggest contributors to that, and one of the greatest and the greatest strength of the Madhva Mata, the Madhva philosophy, has been the fantastic lineage of disciples that Sri Madhvacharya had. In the last session, that was a week before, we had the opportunity to learn a little bit about his Shishyas or disciples who were his contemporaries. And today, we have the opportunity to look at the life and works of three more people who came after him. So, Sri Madhvacharya, as we know, had disappeared from Udupi and went to Uttarabadri, where he lives even today, learning from Sri Vedavyasa. And that happened in the year 1280. So his Janana, or the start of his birth, was in 1200, and in 1280 he went to Badrikashrama. So in today's session, what we are going to be covering is, the life and works of Sri Madhvacharya's disciples who came after him. And who are those disciples, how unique they were. Each of them is a stalwart in his own right. And they were all very unique in the way they looked at Sri Madhva philosophy. And what did they believe in Madhvacharya and his philosophy? How did they believe that? And why did they trust it so wholeheartedly? And very importantly for all of us, what is it that we can learn from their lives? It's very common. Whenever we want to learn something, we always look for role models. We look for people whom we can follow. And so Sumadvijaya itself mentioned, Gamana Sanasankatadi Leelaha. So everything that Sri Madhvacharya did in his lifetime was a lesson to the people around him. The way he sat, the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he wrote, the way he performed the puja, the way he took a bath, everything had a lesson for everybody around him. And that great quality has been sort of continued by his disciples. So in the last session, we had the opportunity to look at all these people. So you see some color coding going on here. So we have a list of many, many great gurus, and this list is almost endless. So you will see that there are three colors in the slide. The names which are grayed out are people whom we have already covered in our previous discussions. And today we are going to be talking about Sri Jaitirtha, Sri Sripadaraja, and Sri Yasaraja. All three great gurus in their own right. And in the session that we're going to have next Saturday, we're going to be covering four more people. Again, someone whom we are all very familiar with. Sri Vadaraja Tirtharu, Sri Vijayendra Tirtha, Sri Raghottama Tirtha, and of course the world famous and very well known, after whom this organization, the New England Sri Raghavendra Swami Vrindavana itself is founded, which is Sri Raghavendra Swamiji himself. So that is the largest scheme we're going to be looking at. We've got three very, very, very interesting stories to cover today, and let's get started with each one of them. So Sri Akshobhya Tirtha, as you know, Madhvacharya had ordained the Ashtamatadipatis. He founded 8 mutts, all of them in Udupi. But apart from that, he had a Mula Pitha that had 4 people who succeeded him in a particular order. So when he ordained them, he had actually specified and instructed that there will be a succession plan, which will start with Sri Padmanabha Tirtharu, then it will be Sri Narahari Tirtharu, then Madhava Tirtharu, and Shri Akshobhya Tirtharu. So it was clear how they will succeed him going forward. But what was not very clear at that time was who will succeed Shri Akshobhya Tirtharu. Now, Shri Akshobhya Tirtha himself was the youngest disciple to be ordained under sannyasa after Sri Madhvacharya. Sri Madhvacharya was ordained as a sannyasi at the age of 8, and Shri Akshobhya Tirtha was ordained as a saint at the age of 10. So both of them were very young. Of course, Shri Akshobhya Tirtha is one of the doyens of philosophy at that point in time. And we will look at his story in greater detail. But at this stage, suffice it to say that he had actually defeated none other than Sri Vidyaranyar, who was an Advaiti scholar of the highest order. Even to this day, the proof of the debate that followed between the two of them and the judgment which was delivered by Sri Vedanta Dikshitar, who was like a third-party judge who sat on this debate and then decided and announced that it was indeed Shri Akshobhya Tirtha who had won the debate because of his argumentation. So that Vijay Stamba exists in Mulibaglu, a small town which is between Bangalore and Tirupati. So if you go from Bangalore to Tirupati, please do visit the Mulibaglu temple and Matha. We will talk about that Matha in greater detail. But closer to that is a small hillock, and on top of that you find the Vijay Stamba. So that was Akshobhya Tirtha. But then, as he was getting aged and time went by, he was faced with a very unique question. He said, who will succeed me now? Shri Madhvacharya has told all my predecessors that who will be succeeding them. But I do not have any such instructions. So with a slightly anxious mind, he went to sleep one day. And who came in his dreams? None other than Sri Madhvacharya himself. So Sri Madhvacharya instructed him in his dream, and this is a very, very unique story. He told him that tomorrow, when you wake up, please meditate on God like you always do. And suddenly you will see some very strange occurrence, a strange event. And that will tell you who your successor will be. That event will lead you to your successor. And Shri Akshobhya Tirtha woke up absolutely stunned by his dream, but relieved that he had got his instruction about who his successor is going to be. So as instructed, he went on the banks of the Kagini river. There is a river which flows into many parts of the northern part of Karnataka. And that river, the picture that you can see, is the Kagini river in Karnataka. So that was flowing by, and he was sitting on a rock on the banks of the river, meditating. And who should come there? He sees a 20-year-old person, young boy, sitting on a horse and coming towards the river. The horse was absolutely excited to see the river because it's a very warm place. So it's not surprising that the horse was indeed thirsty and wanted to drink water. And so was the boy who was riding the horse as well. So instead of getting down from the horse and drinking the water with his hands, as was a practice of drinking water from the river and letting the horse drink as well, he decided to save time, and he sat on the horse and took the horse into the river, so that both the horse and he could drink the water at the same time. He tried something fantastic. Shri Akshobhya Tirtha was sitting on the banks, was seeing all this. This is a unique thing. I've never seen someone getting into a river like this. So how does this work? And suddenly, even without his knowing or even realizing what he was saying, he asked a question. Kim Pashu Purva Dehe? That means, were you an animal in your previous birth? And that was a magical moment for himself and the person who was riding the horse. The moment he said Kim Pachu Purva Dehe, that boy had an instant moment of realization about his previous birth. And that person came and fell at the feet of Shri Akshobhatirtha and told him that please ordain me a sannyas. So the question was, were you a birth in your previous Janma, and today, and the boy came running and falls at his feet and made me a sannyasi? Can you relate the two? Absolutely not. Sounds bizarre. But here is a story. Let's go back in time. When Madhvacharya was once teaching his disciples, he had many people who were scholars, and all of them were keen to understand from Sri Madhvacharya about who will be writing the commentary on his text. So what he did was that he woke up and people asked him, who will write the commentary on your books? And he responded by saying, Vyakhyasya Sesho Gorat. That means the Vyakhyana or the commentary on my text will be written by the bull which is sitting there. And there was a bull which was sitting there. Now that bull was a very unique bull. It was actually the mobile library for Sri Madhvacharya. So Madhvacharya had the unique habit of collecting books wherever he went on spiritual matters, and he would store it on the back of that bull, and the bull will go wherever he went. So many of us think, why should I buy books? I'm not going to read it. I may not read it. But when it comes to materialistic things, we keep buying it. No, maybe, somebody in my family will read it, or somebody in my lineage would read it, or I can give it to somebody. I think we should think very similarly. And that's a great lesson from Sri Madhvacharya. He did not need any of those books. He's Sarvagnacharya. That means one who knew everything. Yet he collected books as a way to tell all of us the importance of having books with all of us. So the bull carried those books around. And again, there is a lesson for us. If we keep having those books and keep moving it from one place to the other, or even having that anusandhana or that frame mindset, then one day, maybe with God's grace, I will read these books. God will definitely get us to read those books someday. But if we don't have those books, if it is not in our scheme of things, we are very sure we will never be able to read those books, because we are completely out of the radar, and the books are completely out of our radar. Whether we may read it immediately or not read it, I think never please miss an opportunity to have and procure a book, especially on spiritual matters. So immediately, the people around him, the scholars around him, were very jealous. They said, we should kill the bull. Can you imagine such great scholars, all of who were disciples of Sri Madhvacharya, suddenly got into a fit of anger and jealousy, and they actually took that got some poison and fed it to the cow. Now they say that whatever a Brahmana says, it will come true. Brahmanosya mukhamasit. So what God's face is nothing but the Brahmins. So whatever they say has to come true. And immediately the cow died. Now this matter was brought to Sri Madhvacharya's attention, who obviously knew that somebody had poisoned it. And he decided to save the cow. And he recited the famous Dvadasha stotra, which is recited at the time of offering the food to the god. It's Naivedya. At that time, he actually offered it to the god. He recited that shloka. Now, why we recite Dvadasha stotra is that if there is any negative energy in that food, it's all taken away and then it's offered to God. And since all the negative energy has been taken out, the food that is available to us will be sattvic. It will be the food that we can consume, because now it is not just food, it is a prasada of God himself. So he recited that Dvadasha stotra and sprinkled that holy water on the cow, which immediately came back to life, much to the astonishment and surprise, and in some sense, even a sense of shame amongst people who had actually performed such a bad action. So that cow was reborn as this particular boy whom we are talking about. So whom are we talking about? We're talking about none other than Sri Jaitirtha himself. The boy was ordained a sannyasi and Pitadipati by Shri Tirtha and became the absolute world famous Sri Tirtha. Now, why do we say she is world famous? Is in the entire philosophical world, there is nobody whose name is who's got this position of Tika Rayar or Tika Kritpadar. He's the only person, not only in Madhva Mata but any other Mata, where people have written a Tika. So Tika, the word Tika is a Sanskrit word. In Kannada, when we say Tika, it actually means actually criticizing someone. But in the Vedic world, in the Shastric world, this word, it means someone who writes an appreciative commentary or a critique, not criticism, critique of somebody else's work. So that is Sri Tirtha, and that is the story of his complete transformation. In our Guru Parampara, we hear about many such stories. There are some people who went through tremendous transformation. Sri Tirtha was one of them. We hear stories similarly about Sri Purandara Dasaru, Sri Vijay Dasaru, who had this complete transformation in their lives. And there are stories of people who were like that, who were spiritual greats from the time of their birth. So Sri Tirtha was born in the year 1345 and he entered the Vrindavana in the year 1388. So he lived for a very short time. I must say there is a mistake here. It is 1388. So he lived for a fairly short period of time. His father was Dhundi Raja. Now we go back in the story a little bit. His who was what is called Palegaras. So Palegara are a clan. They're basically people who came from the Deshapande families. So the Deshapandes were people who were essentially Brahmins, but had to take to the arms to protect their kingdom. And the Dhundi Raja was one such person. Had a very pious wife. Her name is not mentioned in any of the texts that we talk about Sri Tirtha's life. So what he did, they had a wonderful life. He was a chieftain. He had a small kingdom to rule, but unfortunately they didn't have children. So they prayed to Lord Rama, and then Sri Tirtha's boy was born to them. The place of his birth is traced as Pandharapura, which we all know is in the modern day Maharashtra. So he was actually named Dhondu. So Dhondu is a typical name given to children when it's prayed that they remain healthy and strong. Those were days when child mortality was very high. So the children would be named with, it was like a pet name, Dhondu. His full name was Sri Dhondu Raghunatharaya. So he was a Brahmin boy, but again, because he was also ruling, he had the habit of riding a horse, something that a Brahmin boy wouldn't do. He would be reading the scriptures, but Raghunatha Rayaru went on that horse. And by the time he met Sri Tirtharu, he had actually got married. He got married, he had two wives. And since he was very young and his wives were also very young, they were at their parents' place or Raghunatha Rayar's in-laws' place. And the father was very angry when he heard this whole incident. He thought that Sri Tirtha was trying to waylay his son and misguide him and make him a sannyasi. And he came in a fit of rage and he fought with Sri Tirtha, saying, "Why are you misguiding my son? He's very young and you're trying to make him a sannyasi. He's got two wives. He's got a lot of responsibilities and you're taking him away." Sri Tirtha immediately realized that there was no point in arguing, but instead he wanted the divine will to prevail. So he said, "Yes, please take back your son if you want to. I'm not forcing him at all." And the father took away Raghunath Raya. He reached home and said, "Okay, his wives are not here, so he has not started the family life. And once he gets to know the pleasure of the family life of having wife and leading the life of a grihastha, he probably will forget about being a sannyasi." So he calls the two two wives to their home, and on one day, he says, okay, Raghunatha Raya is actually sitting in the on the bed. Both of you should go and meet him. And both of them enter the room. And what do they find? That it is not Sri Raghunatha Raya who's sitting there, but a big snake, 10-headed snake, which is looking at them ferociously. Immediately, they were taken aback. They were scared and anxious, and they ran out of the room, saying that there is a snake there. That is when the father realized that his son was no ordinary boy. And yes, while he had a lot of responsibilities, he had bigger responsibilities to fulfill. So he brought him the very next day and handed him over back to Akshobhatirtha and sought his forgiveness. Sri Akshobhatirtha then ordained him as Sri Dayatirtha, who became the world famous Tika Kripadur. So that is the story of his birth and how he was ordained. This is a picture of the Rashtrakuta fort, which is there in northern Karnataka. This fort belongs to the family of Sri Jaitirtha. So it is not there. It has already collapsed quite a bit because of the passage of time. But you can see some glimpses of this particular fort. This belonged to him. So Sri Jaitirtha's great life as a sannyasi began, and it is unbelievable the kind of dedication, the kind of commitment, the kind of tapashakti that he attained in a very small period of time. The picture that you see on the right side is the Yaragola cave in the Yaragola, which is a hilly region. It's on top of a hill, and it's very difficult to even get into the cave. It's very, very narrow. Sri Jaitirtha, and hold your breath, Sri Jaitirtha wrote a commentary on all the Madhva Granthas that he wrote for 18 of them. He has written the Tika Granthas sitting in that cave. Can you imagine somebody sitting in a rock cave where there is absolute darkness and writing commentary on books that he did not have? So he did not have the Sarvamoola Granthas. His biography clearly states that he wrote it out of his memory. That means the Madhva Granthas were all ingrained, so internalized in his mind that he could read that. He could read it from his mind, and he wrote the commentary. And take my word, if you have ever read Sri Jaitirtha's work, and if you have not, please do read it. You will see the beauty of his presentation, and you can see his Guru Bhakti. That is why it is said, Chitrai Padaischa Gambhirai, Vakyair Manaira Khanditaihi, Guru Bhavam Vyanjayanti Bhatishi Jaitirthavak. So his words, Jaitirthavak, that means his words. How are they? Chitrai Padaischa, each pada, each word is Chitrai, means Vichitra. That means it is absolutely special, unique. Chitrai Padaischa Gambhirai, each word of it is got Gambhirya. That means it is something which is very weighty. It's not a frivolous writing. Chitrai Padaischa Gambhirai, Vakyaihi Manair Akhanditaihi. Vakya, each sentence is Manair. That means it's something which gains the respect, not in the common world alone, but also in the scholarly world. Manair Akhanditaihi. Akhanditaihi, that means it goes on without any break, without any aberrations. Guru Bhavam Vyanjayanti. What he says here is that Guru Bhavam, whatever was the purport of Sri Madhvacharya in the Sarvamoola Granthas, Sri Jaitirtha has captured it so beautifully. Chitrai Padaicha Gambhirai Vakyair Manair Akhanditaihi Guru Bhavam Vyanjayanti Bhati Sri Jaitirthavak. That is the power of his word. And all that is written in this small cave. If you have been there, you will know it's a very small place, very difficult to even go inside. But he sat there and he meditated on goddess Durga, who then appeared in front of him and handed over a pen, a divine pen, and instructed him to write the Tika Granthas. Now, whether you believe in the story or not is another matter. But if you read his texts, you'll be absolutely convinced that it is indeed divine writing. So once when he was sitting inside the cave and writing. Vidyaranya, who is again a fantastic scholar at the Advaiti uh, school of philosophy, once visited that place. And he thought there was somebody sitting inside the cave. So he asked, there's a conversation which I've typed out here. Shri Vidyaranya asks, Antakaha. That means who is there inside? Shri Jaitirtha didn't come out of the cave. He was sitting there and he says, Aham. That means I am there. So Vidyaranya was quite shocked. And he says, Kor Bhavan. He says, Kor Bhavan. Now Jaitirtha says, Sapoham. That means I'm a snake. So Vidyaranya is a little intrigued. He said this person should have said Sarpoham. Why did he say Sapoham? So he gets intrigued and he goes inside. And he says, why did you say Sapoham? You should have said Sarpoham. He said, did you realize what question you asked me? You asked me the question, Kor Bhavan. You should have said Ko Bhavan. The Rekara, you have taken it away. So I thought, since you took it away, I can't use it. So in a very interesting dialogue between the two, Shri Jaitirtha proves his brilliance. And that's not all. Shri Madhvacharya, Vidyaranya asks, what are you writing? He says, I'm writing a commentary on Madhvacharya's Granthas. So he takes the Tika Granthas, few pages that he had already written, and he sees Madhvacharya's Sarvamula Granthas quoted there, because that's the structure of the Tika Grantha. There is the shloka of Madhvacharya is mentioned, and Shri Jaitirtha then writes a commentary on that particular shloka. So he looked at that and he said, this is, all kid stuff. I think this is, Balavakya na kimme. All this looks like Balavakya, that means kid stuff. It's too simple. Do you think it has got any philosophical meaning? Jaitirtha was not willing to take criticism on his guru, and immediately says, Bala Buddhis Twameva. That means your mind is that of a child. That is why you're not able to understand what is the central purport of these granthas. So then he goes ahead and shows his Tika Granthas. And Shri Vidyaranya says, I'm absolutely convinced that, Madhvacharya's writing is very, very pithy. So one may not get the full purport. And you have actually brought out the meaning so well. That is why Sri Yasaraja has composed a beautiful shloka. And I think all of us should recite it every day. He says, Ananda Tirthopadishto Nidhir Narayana Fayaha Pradarshayena Samyak Jaitirtham Tamashay. So he says, Ananda Tirtha or Madhvacharya just talked about the topic of Narayana. He talked about his paramya or his supremacy. But Pradarshayena Samyak, that means Jaitirtha explained it in completeness. He opened the lid of that treasure trove which had Sri Narayana inside it. Madhvacharya said there is Narayana inside it, but it was Jaitirtha who actually opened and showed it to us. So Ananda Tirthopadishto Nidhir Narayana Fayaha Pradashayena Samyak Jaitirtham Tamashay. Beautiful shloka which talks about Jaitirtha and Sri Madhvacharya in one look. So he sat together, and inside that particular cave, he would never come out. He would come out very rarely. And he was on a complete fast all along. And his disciples were very, very, worried about his health. So they would go and plead with him that Shri Jaitirtha, you should eat something. So just to put them at rest, he would come out, take some dry leaves and dip it in the gomutra or the urine of the cow, and then put it in his mouth and said, look, I've eaten my food. That is all he ate. And he used every part of his energy, every part of his mind, every part of his brain to understanding Madhva Shastra and propagating it in the form of his Tika Granthas and some Swatantra Granthas as well. So in our lifetime, let us all make a sincere attempt that yes, we may not be able to read Sriman Nyaya Sudha, which is his magnum opus, but let us make an attempt to read at least some stories, some shlokas, and some books that he has written which are simple, like Padyamala. It's a beautiful book which talks about his the process to be followed to pray to God. The Deva Puja Paddhati, it is forms a part of Padmamala. A very fantastic, very simplified book, and something which is of great utility for all of us who want to perform the puja. So that is the symbol of a snake that you will find in the Yaragola in the cave, and that is symbolizing that it was indeed Jaitirtha who was in that cave. So that is the story of Sri Jaitirtha being in the cave. One more picture. This is the rock from where Sri Jaitirtha would actually. I said he was very isolated. He wouldn't come out in the open very often. But every day in the evening, after he would finish his Sandhya Vandana, he would come and stand in the edge of the rock so that people could have the darshana. So these are pictures taken recently. You can, if you please visit India, and you would like to go there, please do visit it. It was very difficult to reach those places in the past, but now more modes of transportations have come in, and you can reach there without too much difficulty. So very, very isolated place even now. So you can imagine how it was. It must have been a very fairly dense forest at that point in time. It is said that till very recently, tigers could be found around these rocks. So it was completely isolated, and that is the world that Sri Jaitirtha really wanted. To understand how, what he did there, and why did he need this kind of a peace and solitude, one should read his granthas. The depth with which he has spoken, the simplicity with which he has written, and the way his shlokas, his granthas flow. It is like a small stream of pristine water which flows. It is so smooth and yet so cooling. So that is the place, the picture of Sri Jaitirtha where he was there. And his Moola Vrindavana, as we know, is in Malakheda. And again, a fairly isolated place. You can reach there from Bangalore. You can go via Raichur or Gulbarga and reach that place. And it is a place. It's inside a cave. The Vrindavana is inside a cave, and during the peak, monsoon, the whole place actually gets completely submerged underwater. So most of the time during the Jaitirtha Aradhana, it is in the Ashada month, the month in which there are a lot of rains in India, and Sri Jaitirtha's beautiful Vrindavana stays there. So he lived for a very short period of time, and there are always questions asked. Couldn't he have lived a little longer? Now all of us are big fans of cricket, so I'll give a cricketing analogy. It's not about how many balls a batsman has batted, it is how many runs he has scored. And in the short period of time, Sri Jaitirtha has composed texts, including the world famous Srimad Nyaya Sudha, which is a commentary on Sri Madhvacharya's Anuvyakhyana, which is again a commentary on the Brahma Sutras. That is his magnum opus, and we all should pray to God that he gives us an opportunity to at least get some understanding of what he wrote in that great text. That is considered the pinnacle of your understanding of the Madhva Shastra at that point in time. So let us move to our next guru. We have is Sri Sripadaraja. Again, a doyen in his own right, a scholar par excellence. Unfortunately, many books that he is supposed to have written are not available today. But one of the greatest contributions of Sri Sripadaraja was composing many compositions in the Kannada language, the Kannada Devarnama, with a Ranga Vithala Ankita, including the Madhvanama and several other beautiful songs. His songs hit your heart. They go percolate into your heart. And if you don't get a tear in your eyes when you're listening to those Devarnamas, I think you need to read them again. Or maybe we have not understood the meaning. The famous Adi Hogono Baruranga is also one of his several compositions. So Sri Sripadaraja, there is a very interesting story about him. I know we are running a little short of time, so I will move a little fast. So Sripadaraja's guru was Sri Swarnavarna Tirtharu. Swarnavarna Tirtharu, again a great tapasvi. He lived for better half of his life in Srirangam. And once when he was touring the Tirupati, he actually was, when he was about to climb the hill, it seems the whole hill appeared to him as the Saligrama Shila. So he could not keep his leg on the Saligrama Shila. That is how the whole hill appeared to him. So he is supposed to have climbed the hill on his knees to reach on top of that. And for all his daily ablutions, he would actually come down the hill and again climb it up after completing it. A very unique character in our philosophical world. And Sri Swarnavarna Tirtharu once was moving towards Abbur. He was on a pilgrimage. That's where the story actually happens. So this picture that you see is in Srirangam. There is a Shripadaraja Matha there. Visit Srirangam, please do visit. In fact, Srirangam has a unique distinction of having the maximum number of Madhva Vrindavanas in one single city. There are 4 Vrindavanas of the Raghavendra Matha Parampara and several other Vrindavanas to be found in different parts of Srirangam, some of them very close to the river as well. So this Matha is in Srirangam, and you can see the Vrindavana of the Sri Swarnavarna Tirtharu in the middle, and Sri Shripadaraja and Yasaraja Mritika Vrindavanas on either side. So back to the story. Sri Swarnavarna Tirtharu was entering the Abbur village. Abbur even now is a very, very small town of Channapatna. If you go from Bangalore to Mysore, you will encounter the city of toys, as it's called, Channapatna, and you take a small detour, and about 3 kilometers into the towards the river, the Kaveri, you will find Abbur, a place with absolute serenity and quietude. And there you will find the Vrindavana of Sri Brahmana Tirtharu. So we will know about Brahmana Tirtharu in our next story of Sri Yasaraja. So Swarnavarna Tirtharu was approaching the Abbur village, and the sun was setting. And he was a little anxious to find out how far would the village be from where he was going. And he asked somebody, he was being taken in a palanquin because he was quite aged at that time. And the people of his entourage inquired with one a young boy who was going home, who was going back home with after grazing all the cows, a Brahmin boy. So they went to the boy and asked him, how far is the village from here? How far is Abbur from here? To which he gave a stunning answer. He said, look at the sun, look at the cows, look at me, you will get your answer. Now Swarnavarna Tirtharu was sitting in the palanquin listening to all this, and he was quite taken aback. He said, what is this boy saying? And he went down and he saw, the boy said, look, the sun is setting and I'm taking the cows back home. And how old am I? How old do I look? They said about 7 years. Yeah. So if you're that young, if a boy is that young, he can't be very far away from the village if the sun is setting and he has to take the cows home. So that should give you an indication that the town is actually pretty close by. It cannot be very far away. Stunned at this brilliance of the way he answered, Sri Swarnavarna Tirtharu decided on the spot that he is going to be his successor. The very next day, he was ordained as a sannyasi and called and named Sri Shripadaraja. His name, actually, the original name that he has is Lakshmi Narayana Tirtharu. But looking at his Vada Kaushala, or the ability to debate in an interesting manner, Sri Raghunatha Tirtha of Uttaradimat lineage once heard him in a debate, and out of sheer joy, he said, your name should not be Lakshmi Narayana Tirtha, but it should be Shripadaraja. Shripadaraja, that means every word, you are like a king on that word, and you rule every word and every sentence and every topic. So your name should be actually Shripadaraja. That is more like a title given to him, but that stuck on, and today we know Sri Lakshmi Narayana Tirtha as Sri Shripadaraja. So his Vrindavana, again, we will know more about his story in the next story, because his story is very closely interspersed with the Sri Yasaraja story. So he says, it is said that Gnana Vairagya Bhaktyadi Kalyana Gudashalinaha Lakshmi Narayana Guru Mande Vidya Gurun Mama. Somebody like a Vyasatirtha, Yasaraja, who himself is a doyen of the philosophical world, someone with unprecedented scholarship, has called him Vidya Gurun Mama. That means he is the one who taught me, with so much pride. That itself is an indication of the depth that the Sripada Raja had. And of course, uh, he has composed many, many kritis. As I said, some of them are not available now, but those that are available are a very, very clear indication of his scholarship. And the very fact that he was a Vidya Guru and who taught already established scholar like Sri Yasaraja for many, many years is a great testimony about how deep his understanding of Sri Madhva Mata was. So if you get a chance, when you come to Bangalore and you're traveling to Tirupati, this is the place that you have to pass by Mulabagilu. And on the outskirts of the city of Mulabagilu, you will find the famous Narasimha Tirtha. It's a small lake, and on the bank of that is a beautiful idol of Sri Narasimha Devaru, Yoga Narasimha Devaru. And next to that is the Moola Vrindavana of Sri Sripada Raja. So the story of Sri Sripada Raja makes a segue into Sri Yasaraja's story. His story is very large. It's got a lot of aspects, very accurately documented. But in the interest of time, we will look at it in a quick manner. Sri Yasaraja was someone who is known as amongst the Munitrayas. So if we can go back to the previous slide, yes. So there is a very famous shloka which talks about the contribution of these three great saints. So this whole initiative by NESRSB is called Kalpavruksha, and we started on the day of Madhva Navami. So it's very right. It is actually mentioned in the shloka, and I'm sure this shloka has inspired you people to call it Gnanakalpavruksha. So he says, Shri Madhva Kalpavruksha Vrikshastu. So Shri Madhva is like a Kalpavruksha. That means a tree which gives you what you want. Jayarya Kamadhik Spritaha. That means whatever you think and whatever you wish for, you will get it from Sri Jayatirtha. And Sri Chintamanistu Vyasaryaha. Again, Chintamani is a sacred stone which gives you whatever you want. Chintamanistu Vyasaryaha Munitraya Mudahratam. All these three people are called Munitrayas. And to understand why they are sort of called out specifically, Madhvacharya is the Bhashyakara. That means he is the person who has written the commentary on Sri Vedavyas's work. Sri Jayatirtha has written his Tika Granthas on him, on these Granthas, on Sarvamula Granthas, on 18 of them. But it was up to Sri Yasaraja to actually develop it further and explain it in a very, very, very expansive manner. The contribution of all these three saints is unparalleled. And that is why they are bunched together as Munitraya, or the three saints. So, yes. So this is the story of Sri. How the start of the story of Sri Yasaraja. So Sri Yasaraja, again, we just heard about Sri Brahmana Tirtharu and Sri Sripada Raja. So once, what happened was that Sri Yasaraja's parents, they were visiting Badri. They were very aged and they did not have children. So they decided, and they had decided that they will accept this as God's will and not pray to have a child, but use their life in service of God. So once they were going on the way to Badri, and suddenly his Sri Yasaraja's father, the gentleman in the couple, suddenly fell ill, and he was so critically ill that it was believed that he's going to die. It was almost like a terminal disease that he had. So his wife was very, very anxious, and she didn't know what to do, and who should appear in front of them. Sri Brahmana Tirtha, who was coming on the way back from Badri Nath itself. So when he's coming back, they were going, so they met in between, and the lady went and prayed to him that, "Oh Guru, you should help me, because my husband is on his deathbed, and I'm contemplating that I do sahagamana." That means it was a practice those days that if the husband died, the wife would also kill herself and end her life. So, but she wanted to seek the Guru's permission. The Guru said, Ayush, he looked at her husband and said, Ayushman Bhava. That means, may you live long. And he also looked at the woman and said, Putravati Bhava. That means, may you have a child. The lady was shocked. He said, two issues. The husband is on a deathbed. And second thing, both of us are very, very old. And there is no hope that we can beget a child. So Brahmana Tirtha said, look, whatever I say are not my words. They are the words of God Himself. So if I've said it, it will happen and you'll get a child. However, in the interest of the society and to propagate the Dvaita Mata further, you will have to hand over the child to me. So that's the story. Sri Yasaraja is born and he's delivered into a golden plate. Because the child should not have bhusparsha, or something, that the child should not be touching the ground or the earth, because it is said that the earth is a symbol of all that is materialistic. So if somebody is on a golden plate, it means he's above all the materialism, and the child has a different goal altogether, a spiritual goal of unprecedented scale. So Vyasaraja was born in that way. The child was handed over to Sri Brahmana Tirtha, who brought up a child. Imagine a sannyasi with so many restrictions, leading an extremely disciplined life himself, had to bring up a child, and he did that with all the warmth and love. And he brought up the child. He performed the Upanayanam of the child and then ordained him as a sannyasi. And that sannyasi is none other than Sri Vyasaraja. So Vyasarajaru studied under Sri Brahmana Tirtha for many years, and for his further studies, Sri Brahmana Tirtharu instructed him to go to Mulabagalu. Mulabagalu had become a very famous center of learning, a university of higher studies under Sri Sripadaraja. Of course, as we know from Akshobhya Tirtha's days, it had become a center for learning, and there were active debates and intellectual activities that were happening in Mulabagalu all the time. So Brahmana Tirtharu thought it right that Sri Yasaraja should learn under the tutelage of Sri Sripadaraja, and he deputed him to go and actually learn under Sri Sripadaraja. So on his way from Abbur to Mulabagalu, there were several groups of scholars, not individuals, but groups, who came to have a debate with Sri Yasaraja. Sri Yasaraja was all of 20 years at that time, and he defeated them one committee after the one team after the other. And the news soon spread that the person who is going to come and study under Sri Sripadaraja was someone who was so well endowed that he was defeating groups of scholars in debates on his way. So you can imagine what would be the state of mind for Sri Sripadaraja. So he was probably wondering, how is he going to be teaching such a illustrious and such a talented and such well educated person already? And he prayed to Lord Anjaneya. Again, there is an idol of Sri Anjaneya now. Of course, that is established as Vyasaraja, but Sripadaraja had another small idol of Sri Hanuman, whom he prayed to every day. And he prayed to him and said, what am I going to do now? Because I need to be in the top of the game to be able to coach this person, to educate him. And Sri Madhvacharya came in his dreams and said, don't worry, you will have no issues. I will give you the strength. Just recite Sri Harivayastati every day with all the dedication, and I will come into you and then be able to instruct Sri Yasaraja. This is what happened. And when we look at Sri Yasaraja's stature as a scholar and his fantastic contribution, this story is not difficult to believe. It was only a scholar, only a great guru like Sri Sripadaraja and Sri Madhvacharya himself, with his Sannidhana in Sri Sripadaraja, could have given this kind of a scholarship. So Sri Yasaraja reached Mulabagalu, and he started his studies under Sri Sripadaraja. So he was praying to the Samsthana gods, and one day when he was actually doing the puja, Sri Yasaraja was doing the puja, Sri Yasaraja was sitting somewhere else and meditating a short distance away. And suddenly, people who were looking at the puja happening saw that Sri Yasaraja had picked up the saligrama stones, and he had started to sing songs and using the two saligramas as to keep the beats. And they were all enraged. They said, "Look at this boy. He's so young, and they've allowed him to do the puja. And what is he doing? Doesn't he mean disrespect to the god?" So they went running to Sri Raja and said, "Look, this is what your student is doing," um, out of jealousy. And Shri Raja knew what was happening. With his divine vision, he could see what was happening. He came and he saw. And what he saw, nobody else could see. Only Vyasaraja and he could see. That it was not just a mere, playing with those stones, but he was actually clapping against them to keep the beats and singing a song, because Sri Krishna himself had come and he was dancing in front of him. What a great sight, what a divine intuition both of them should have had. And if you see, that is the idol of Sri Krishna, which is there even today in the Sripada Rajamath. So, this is the story of Sri Yasaraja. Let's move ahead with the story further, and then we'll take some questions. So, Sri Yasaraja, there is a very unique story again. There was a place called Chandragiri. So those of you who have gone to Tirupati will have passed via the Chandragiri fort. It is on the outskirts of the Tirupati town even now, and it's a beautiful town, a beautiful fort. And the king of Chandragiri had the administrative control over the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams. And once the king visited the temple, and what he saw was stunning and enraging. The priests over there, the people who were performing the puja, had actually picked up their children and used the vahanas, or the different vehicles that are used during Brahmotsavam. All of you would have seen that, where there is a Shesha Vahana, there is a Garuda Vahana, there is a Hanuman Vahana, there is a Hamsa Vahana, and there are several such deities and chariots which are there, which are after the great Devatas. And they had actually used those chariots, and they had kept their children on top of that, and they were taking them for a joy ride. So, using something official for personal use is, anyway, all of us know, is a big is an aberration, and it is illegal to do that. So the king got so angry, in a fit of anger, he just killed the entire family which was performing the puja to Lord Venkateshwara. And immediately after he had done that, he was faced with two challenges. One was he became extremely aware of the sin that he had committed by killing so many people. And at the same time, he got worried who will do the puja to Lord Venkateshwara from the next day. So he ran towards Mudabaglu, knowing that Sri Raja was there, and fell at his feet and said, "Sri Raja, you have to help me, and you have to help me get rid of my sins, and also help me organize for someone to start performing the puja from the next day." So Sri Raja had answers to both. He took up the Shankodaka, the sacred conch that is used during the puja. We do the Shankha Brahmana, that is, we take the water inside the conch and offer it to the god, and that is sprinkled on people to get them rid of all the negative and evil forces. So he did that to the king, and also told him that he will depute his disciple, that is Sri Yasaraja, to go and perform the puja in Tirupati. Sri Yasaraja took instructions, obeying him. He went to Tirupati and he performed the puja to Lord Sri Venkateshwara for 12 long years, something which is unprecedented. It is only the people who belong to the family who have always been performing the puja, right from Puranic days, as ordained by Srinivasa himself. But as a big exception, and as a fantastic recognition of Sri Raja, Sri Madhvacharya's lineage, and of course Sri Yasaraja's own dedication, own commitment and tapashakti that he got the opportunity to perform the puja to Lord Venkateshwara for 12 long years. But, doing the puja itself is not enough. The administration of one of the world's richest temples is something that he started. And it is said that many administrative changes that were made in Tirupati happened at his time and under his administration. Now, as a symbol of that, even now, when you visit the Tirumala temple, you will find the Swami Pushkarani lake on the banks of that. There is the Swami Pushkarani, and next to that, as all of you know, there is the Lakshmi Varaha temple, and next to that Lakshmi Varaha temple is a place called Sri Yasaraja Anhika Sthala. That means that's a place that he sat every day and performed his daily rituals, all the time looking at Sri Srinivasa. Of course, it is also said that there is another small mantapa just next to the Garbhagudi, or the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, where he would sit and meditate on Srinivasa himself, and he would do the puja. Now that is not visible from outside because we don't get to go that close, but there is supposed to be another place inside. And all this happened by Yasaraja. So after he finished 12 years of puja, he fell at the feet of Sri Venkateshwara. And what a supreme sacrifice, that after doing the puja for 12 long years, he handed over the puja system and rituals back to the family. So what had happened was, one of the women who which belonged to the family where everybody else got killed was alive, and she was pregnant with a child. So Sri Yasaraja waited for her to deliver the child, and the child to grow up for 12 years, taught the child how to perform the puja in the Vaikhanasa, which is a specific way of doing the puja to Lord Venkateshwara. He taught him, and then he decided to leave that place. Now, once somebody gets control over such a great temple, and clearly one of the greatest pilgrimages in the world, not just in India, all of us would agree with that. He had beautiful, he had the ability, or the vairagya, or the detachment to leave, give back the control and the puja to that boy, and he left that place. And he did the puja on the Dwadashi day, and he fell at Lord Venkateshwara for the last time in those 12 years. And what should happen? The big uttariya, or the cloth which was on Lord Venkateshwara, fell on him as blessing. It is unprecedented because as we all know, the idol itself is very big. Every part is actually tied so that it doesn't slip off. But magically and mystically, and by the grace of God, it actually fell on Sri Yasaraja, giving him, which was nothing but the blessing of none other than Lord Venkateshwara himself to Sri Yasaraja. So Sri Yasaraja prayed to Lord Venkateshwara again and left that place, and only to be welcomed by none other than Sri Krishna Devaraya. So Sri Yasaraja then moved from Tirupati to the Vijayanagara Samrajya, which is the Vijayanagara Empire, which is ruled by one of the greatest emperors in India, which is Sri Krishna Devaraya, a very righteous king. And he was taken in by Sri Yasaraja's scholarship. And once he was, somebody had written, Sri Yasaraja was teaching his disciples, Patha. And at that time, Sri Krishna Devaraya was running towards him, very anxious. And Sri Yasaraja asked him, what has happened? Why are you so worked up? He said, no, we have a challenge. A group of scholars from another kingdom have written a letter to me on Nyaya Shastra. And they're asking me, is there anybody of any stature in your kingdom who can respond to the queries that we have raised? And so you should help me. So Vyasaraja just looked at that letter, which had very complex questions on the Nyaya Shastra, and said, yes, we can answer. So the king asked him that, I think we should respond in some time. He said, no, not some time. We're going to answer right now. So he called the disciple, and right there, he was able to counter every single question that those people had asked him. Not remember, it's not a single scholar, it's a group of scholars. And then that was the story of his response. And Sri Krishnadevaraya was absolutely stunned. He said, what I expected would take days of contemplation, Sri Yasaraja has done it in a matter of a few minutes, an hour, and he could respond to those people. And imagine the plight of those people who had raised those questions, because they never would have challenged somebody like Sri Krishnadevaraya if they were not absolutely sure, but only to be given the right answer. Sri Krishnadevaraya then prayed to Sri Yasaraja and asked him that you are such a great scholar, such a great guru. I think the best thing that you can do for the kingdom is to actually found a multidisciplinary university. And he requested Sri Yasaraja to start a university. And Yasaraja promptly obliged. He founded what is called the Vishwapamana Matha, a center of learning in the southern part of India. And look at the dates. It was founded 100 years before the world famous Harvard University was started in the United States. 100 years before that, the southern part of India had a multidisciplinary university, a residential school, which had 10,000 students learning different aspects, not just the scriptures, but forms of art, poetry, and other schools of knowledge as well. It is said that the whole kingdom of Vijayanagara was lit all the time in the night as well. And sometimes it would appear that the sun has never set because of the technology that they had used to light up the whole place in a very unique manner. It is also said that precious stones was being sold on the streets in such a prosperous kingdom. And then Krishnadevaraya announced that Sri Yasaraja is indeed going to be his Kula Guru, or someone who's going to be, or Rajaguru, or someone who's going to be advising him on all administrative, spiritual, and social matters. So that was the gravitas of Sri Yasaraja. But that was not at the end of Sri Krishnadevaraya's troubles. Once he came running to Sri Yasaraja, saying that the astrologers have predicted that he's going to die on the Paurnami, because he's going to be attacked by an evil spirit because of a certain defect in his horoscope. So Sri Yasaraja said, no problem, I am going to be sitting on the throne. The evil spirit says that it's going to be catching anybody who sits on the throne. So Krishnadevaraya says, no way I'm going to endanger your life just to save mine. So Sri Yasaraja says, you didn't hear what I said. I'm not saying I'm going to die. I just said I'm going to be sitting on the throne. So don't worry, nothing is going to happen to me. So for one day, Sri Krishnadevaraya handed over the entire kingdom to Sri Yasaraja. And Yasaraja sat on the throne. And at that time, when the evil spirit was expected, it did promptly and tried to attack Sri Yasaraja. Again, Yasaraja was not at all anxious, forget being scared. He faced the evil spirit, took the holy water and sprinkled and killed it instantly, and promptly handed back the kingdom to the king. Again, you can imagine his Vishesha Tapashakti and his detachment. If he wanted, he could have stayed as the king. If he wanted, he could have stayed in Tirupati. But probably the fact that 700 years after Sri Yasaraja entered the Vrindavan, we are still talking about him, is a great testimony to his greatness, and someone who stands as a picture of scholarship even today. So that is one of the pictures of the Vishwapamana Matha. Another picture, another view of the steps that would lead to this. All this has been discovered fairly recently during the excavation of the Hampi area, which was at that time the kingdom, the capital of the Vijayanagara kingdom. Yeah. So there is one more story I would like to recite, and then we will move to the closure of this session. So one of the disciples that Sri Yasaraja had was Sri Vishnu Tirtha. Now this Vishnu Tirtha is different from Madhvacharya's brother, whose name was also Sri Vishnu Tirtha. So Yasaraja had groomed him to be probably his successor. and he had taught him the Sarvamula Granthas 9 times and the Shrimad Nyaya Sudha 6 times. We wonder, why did he have to learn so many times? Because it's the depth that they will really want to go. Look at a doctoral student, picks up a very small area and goes very deep, and that's why he's awarded doctorate. So Sri Vishnu Tirtha was studying under Yasaraja in a very dedicated manner. And one of the persons by name Surendra Tirtha, he visited Hampi and he visited Sri Yasaraja. There's a big story about him which we will learn sometime later. But he comes in and he requests Sri Yasaraja to depute his disciple to come to Kumbakonam and to counter the different forms of philosophies which were misguiding people there. And he needed somebody as strong as Sri Vishnu Tirtha to be his successor and not Sri Yasaraja's successor, but stay in Kumbakonam and propagate the philosophy there. Without blinking an eye, Sri Yasaraja says, yes, done. My disciple is going to be your disciple starting tomorrow, and he will propagate the Madhva Mata there. So this person who was known as Sri Vishnu Tirtha then becomes Sri Vijayendra Tirtha, whose disciple was Sri Sudhindra Tirtha, and Sudhindra Tirtha's disciple is none other than Sri Raghavendra Swami himself. So Sri Raghavendra Swamiji is known as Madhva Mata Vardhanaha, someone who spread the Madhva Mata. Vijayendra Karab Jyotha Sudhindra Varaputraka. That means he comes in that lineage. So that's the lineage of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. It basically goes back to Sri Yasaraja himself. So the Vrindavana of Sri Vijayendra is there in Kumbakonam. It has been recently reconstructed, and we will learn more about Sri Vijayendra Tirtha in the next session. So that is the story of Sri Vijayendra Tirtha and his connection to Sri Yasaraja. Sri Yasaraja also established hundreds of Hanuman temples all across the southern part of India, and they are very, very typical with the sign of a bell in the tail, the Hanuman idol turning to one side, yet both the eyes are clearly visible. There is a Saugandhika Pushpa, or a special divine flower, which is holding in the right side. And in many of these idols, a demon is seen getting crushed under his leg. So this is the signature of Sri Yasaraja. Now, why did he establish so many Hanuman temples all across? Was wherever there is an idol of Hanuman, it is not a temple alone, it is a matha. Matha is known as Chhatradi Nalayaha. That means it is a university, it's a school, it is a place for people to learn. That's the official definition of a matha. So he had founded so many Hanuman temples all across as a symbol about the supremacy of the Dvaita philosophy, and also give every opportunity for everybody, wherever they are, even in the most remote places, to pray to Lord Hanuman. Now, this picture that you see is that of the famous Yantrodharaka Prana Devaru, which is in Hampi. You have to climb a small hill and you will find the Yantrodharaka Prana Devaru. Next to that is the famous Chakratirtha, where the Tungabhadra river cuts into a 90 degrees. It comes this way, hits this spot, the Chakratirtha, and then takes a detour, and which is like 90 degrees. That any place where the river changes its direction is known as Tirtha Kshetra, and that is the place that you will find the Yantrodharaka Pranadevaru. So this is some sense the story of Sri Yasaraja. Sri Yasaraja's Vrindavanam, the Samadhi, is in the Nava Vrindavana, which is about 40 kilometers away from Hampi. There are 9 Vrindavanas. It started with the first Vrindavana, which was that of Sri Padmanabha Tirtharu, and Sri Yasaraja's comes subsequently. Now, this is very, very distinguishable because of the immense amount of carving that one can see on the Vyasaraja Vrindavanam, and there is a small mantapa, there is a small structure in front of the Vrindavana. So this is the Nava Vrindavana, and what we'll see subsequently is the Vrindavana of Sri Yasaraja himself. It is the greatness of Sri Yasaraja is so high that you look at his contribution to Vyasa Sahitya, Dasa Sahitya, administration power, ability to found a university, an educationist exemplar, a poet unparalleled, and above all, one of the one of the best gurus who propounded the Dvaita philosophy all across the world. His Vyasatrayas, the three great texts that he wrote, are amongst the greatest scholarly works in the spiritual world even today. Sri Yasaraja had acceptance as a guru, not just amongst the Dvaita cult, but the entire philosophical world. His Vishwapamana Matha had, it seems, students coming from all walks of life, even foreign countries to study. That was the depth of his knowledge. And his contribution is something that we can ever forget. So that is why he's counted along with Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Jaitirtha, and as a Munitraya, or a combination of the three of them. So that is the story of Sri Yasaraja. So we had the opportunity to learn about three of our great gurus. In subsequent session, we will look at four such gurus again in a quick manner. Now, all of you will appreciate that these stories are very enchanting and have to be understood and recited in greater detail. There's a lot more information available about them. But we will look at a subsequent date some other time when we can look at each of their lives and their works in some detail. But for the purpose of this series of lectures, where we want to get an overview about the entire Dvaita philosophy, we thought it right that we present these stories at a conceptual level. Next session is going to be on the 4th of April, which is going to cover 4 more Shishyas at the same time. So I will wait and see if there are any questions that you have. Did Vidyaranya get convinced on Tattvada through his debate with Akshopatirtha and his interaction? So Vidyaranya had accepted at that point in time that yes, there were a lot of very valid things that he had not considered. But did it make him convert and give up Advaita? No, it did not. He still continued to be an Advaita scholar, but the debate itself convinced him that many of his argumentations were indeed wrong. We don't have the history clearly written about what were the changes that happened in Sri Vidyaranya's thinking because of these debates, but suffice it to say at that point in time that the very fact that the Vijayastambha stands even today, and it is all, this debate is documented in some detail with Akshopatirtha, and Sri Vidyaranya himself took all the granthas, the Sarvamula granthas and the Tika granthas that Sri Jaitirtha has written at that point in time, and took it around the whole place on an elephant as a mark of honor to those granthas, clearly says that he indeed saw the viewpoint that both Akshopatirtha and Sri Jaitirtha had indeed propounded. So I know I'm not giving a decisive answer, but that is what happened at the debate. How is the lineage following Jaitirtha taking shape today? Yes, so it is, one part of it comes as the contemporary Uttaradimat, and the other one there is a lineage which takes to the other matas also. So I will try and explain the whole matha lineage system in a subsequent workshop. It is not very complicated, but one will have to follow it in some detail. So yes, the lineage of the matha is one thing, but across all the mathas, it is very, very clearly acknowledged that the place of Sri Jaitirtha as a Tika Kratpadaru, as someone who really helped us to understand what Madhvacharya was saying, was something that is absolutely unparalleled. So that is the stature of Sri Jaitirtha. One should read his works. My only request to all of you who are attending this session is that make an attempt to read at least one page or one book or something about, not just about them, but also about their work. I think all of you must be intrigued. What is so great about what Jaitirtha has written? What is so great about Sri Yasaraja has written? So let me read something simple and understand what that is. We will be covering all this in another workshop where we are talking about how do you study Madhva Shastra and what would get one started. But definitely in our lifetime, all of you are from the Boston and Massachusetts area, many of you. You will all agree with me that, if you imagine you stay in Boston and never go to the Harvard University or go to an MIT. What a waste of time that would be for everyone. The same thing is with us as well. We have such great gurus who have given us such great works, not only acknowledged by the Madhva community, but by everybody in the world. And if we don't get a chance to read them, I think we'll have to spend a lot of time in our old age wondering why we did not do it. And I'll be very curious to know why people wouldn't want to do it. So please make an attempt to read these books. Excellent translations are available. Who started the current architecture of all the Vrindavan? Any significance of this architecture? I'm sorry, I'm not getting the question. Profound history and well, who started the current architecture? So the construction of the Vrindavana is as per the Agama Shastra. There are clear instructions on how a Vrindavana should look. How there are several options available, but certain broad parameters are clearly mentioned in the Agama Shastra. The proportion is mentioned, so it has to be constructed in that manner. The samadhi has to be built below the ground. The samadhi is never the mortal body is never inside the Vrindavana. It is always inside the ground, and the Vrindavana is built over it. That's the construction that is there. I had the opportunity to see Sri Vishwesha Tirtha's Vrindavana being built in Bangalore, so that I've seen it at very close quarters. So there is a clear proportion, there are clear rules, and there are clear designs which are mentioned for the architecture of these Vrindavanas. And the people who have done research on this topic tell me that the way this has been mentioned is that these Vrindavanas are unshakable. So the Anegundi, the 9 Navavrindavana area, always gets submerged underwater during the rainy season. It's a small island of the main town, and you have to go there by a boat, a short boat ride to get to that place. Those of you who have gone would remember this. But at the time of the floods during peak rainy season, the whole Navavrindavana goes inside water. But every time the water gets cleared, the Navavrindavanas are intact. Nothing happens to them. So I think it has been built with to be very, very strong and stand the test of time. Why was Madhva way of performing puja not continuing after Yasaraja? So it was not that it did not continue. It is by Yasaraja's own will that he gave it up. Now, if you go to the Shastras, it is ordained that the people who belong to the Vaikhanasa family those people should continue doing the puja. That's the will of God himself, and that has sort of continued over the years. But when Sri Yasaraja was there, he performed the puja as per the Madhva Sampradaya, because in his Srinivasa Stotra, he clearly mentions that Lord Venkateshwara, whom he is seeing, has Angara and Akshata on it. So that's how he proved. He prayed. But after him, when he handed it back, he taught the boy to perform the puja in the Vaikhanasa family, in the Vaikhanasa tradition. So why was Madhva? It was by his own will that he gave that up back to the Vaikhanasa family. So that is the history, and it's a great story of sacrifice and detachment, because the larger message is that the will of God, will always prevail, no matter what. So yes, we have overshot the time. It's repeating for the second week, but honestly, you can't blame me. It is the stories of such great gurus which keeps us so engaged. The fortunate thing is that a lot of information is available about these gurus, and it is always a matter of deciding when you want to stop, because so much information with so much of research is available that one can go endlessly. Is there any significance of Navavrindavana here because so many Pitas have chosen that area? Yes, it is believed that the Navavrindavana at one time was actually a place where many rishis have performed great tapas and the homas and yagnas. That is the significance. It has Puranic mentions as well that that place is indeed a very sacred place. Also, if you observe, most of the Vrindavanas, the Mula Vrindavanas, are in very secluded places. Again, all of them are sannyasis. They wanted to be away from the world. They've chosen that as the life, and they wanted quietude and solitude to be able to pray. Mantralaya may be a very big town now, but when Sri Raghavendra Swamiji entered the Vrindavana there, it was a very, very isolated place, very hot. It's so warm there that one cannot even enter those days. Similarly, with Sode, where Sri Vadiraja's Vrindavana is there, Raghotama Vrindavana, which is again in Tirukoilur, on the outskirts of the city. So all these places are very isolated. So Navavrindana is very, very isolated. Even today, it's not easy to reach that place. You have to go to Hampi and drive for another 40 kilometers to reach there, and then you have to cross the river in a boat to reach that place. So that's why they probably all sought these very special places. Yes, can you repeat? Can you recommend some simple reads to start to resonate what you share? Surely, I'll be happy to share a list of resources, Nagaraj Javre, with Sujit and Sri Murali. I can send the list of some simple reads in the session that we're going to have after the next one. We are going to be discussing about how do we actually study the Madhva Shastra. And there I will mention easy to read books that one can get started with. So the Madhva Shastra is like an ocean of nectar. In that ocean, we may not be able to drink the entire ocean. But even if you drink or take one spot or one drop of that honey, of that nectar, even that is as sweet. Madhva Shastra is not just Madhva Shastra, it is Madhu Shastra. Madhu is honey. So even if you read some part of it, it gives you a lot of satisfaction. So let us not be worried about the quantity. I think the way you're mentioning, Mr. Nagaraj, it's great that you thought about this in this manner. And this is precisely the objective of the people who are organizing this program. Everybody should get an introduction, get a little bit of inspiration, and then see whether they can read it themselves. You know, whenever you talk about a dish, we all tell, have you eaten in that hotel? It's so beautiful. Immediately you say, okay, I want to eat it. You don't say that, okay, let somebody else go and eat it. Like that, Madhva Shastra is something that we have to read ourselves and enjoy it in our own way, in our own little way maybe. But everything that we read is something which will give us a lot of satisfaction. So definitely I will share that. I'm interested in reading Ratna Avre. Please, I think great that you are interested. As I said, we will share a list of resources that men, women, and people who are getting into it at an introductory level are also able to study this. So I owe that list to you in the workshop after that. And if there's any central way in which this can be published by the organizers, that would be wonderful as well. But I will definitely share these resources. Some of them are readily available on the web. You can get started straight away. And some of them are books that you can get from India or anybody else who's writing it locally as well. But please make an attempt and start to reading it yourself. I will definitely suggest those resources right now. So I wanted to talk about an initiative called Vandyam. Vandyam is a social organization which has been started by me and my wife recently. We started about 3 years back. And since then, what we've been doing is the Vandyam Prasada Food Private Limited. Basically, the idea is to serve sattvic food cooked in traditional way, offered as Naivedya to Lord Krishna, and delivered to the homes of people who want this kind of food. So that service is on for 3 years, and people are more than 150 subscribers buy it every day. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But more importantly, I also wanted to share with you the work that is being done as a part of Vandyam Foundation, which is serving the food for the soul and serving the food to the needy. So there are many people who can't afford this kind of food, but who want to eat traditional food or the food offered to God. The food we offer to God is just the food. But when we get it back It is not food, it's Naivedya, it's a prasada, which has got spiritual qualities. And Vandyam as an organization is doing this for about 3 years. And recently we started the Vandyam Foundation as well, which also conducts the Madhvacharya for the youth workshops. So if you want to know more details about what Vandyam is, the food service, if you want it for anybody, you may let us know as well. Be happy to serve them. And also about the Vandyam Foundation. So you can access this on the net on vandyam.in, and I will talk about more about it in the subsequent sessions. But again, I would like to thank you, all of you, for your patient listening to the lives of three great gurus. And every moment that we heard the story has got an inspiration for all of us. So let us all um, rededicate ourselves to learning about them, about the great works that they have shared with all of us. We're so happy and so fortunate that these books are available. These books are translated by eminent scholars, and something that is within our arm's length. Many of them have also given detailed pravachanas on these books, which are available on the net. So let's not lose even 1 second in our lives to make it worthwhile. Thank you so much and have a great Sunday and the rest of the week. See you next week. Namaskar.